This is CBC Vancouver News.
It was heartbreaking. You know, we hear of these situations that happen. It's not uncommon for people to seek shelter anywhere they can.
Almost killed inside a garbage truck. How a BC man's ordeal is shedding light on the desperate search for housing. Calls for more communication and transparency. A new report reviews the province's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We don't know what our personal circumstances are or how they may change. It's not about judging, it's about kindness.
Plus, a day of giving will bring you inside CBC's 36th annual Food Bank Day and how you can still help. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Only the sounds of banging stopped a horrifying situation in the Okanagan from ending in tragedy. A man was trapped inside the back of a West Kelowna garbage truck, hurt and hypothermic when he was pulled out. Brady Strachan has more on the desperate ways some people without homes are trying to survive.
This is how some people are keeping warm as temperatures drop into the double digits below freezing.
That's about it. I'm going to take that inside.
James, who asked that we not use his last name, is one of several dozen people sleeping outside in Kelowna's designated homeless camp.
The last 4 days have been pretty bloody cold. Until then, it was okay, but like the night before last, that storm that hit a couple of nights back, it was brutal. I mean, a lot of people's tents were flattened.
With all the city's homeless shelters at capacity, James says it's not surprising to hear one man out in the elements sought refuge in an industrial dumpster.
No, if I didn't have a shelter, I would too. I mean, a dumpster's a logical place. You got shelter and you have insulation built in too.
Police say that man is lucky to be alive and only suffered minor injuries after a garbage truck driver inadvertently dumped him into the back of his truck yesterday morning.
He was quite concerned and because one of the things he does is cycle his compaction, and he figures he did it twice between picking up and stopping the vehicle. So he was quite concerned and a little upset about the possibility of what he was going to find inside the truck.
It happened here in this block of strip malls in West Kelowna, far from any shelters or supports for people forced to live on the streets.
It was heartbreaking. You know, we hear of these situations that happen. It's not uncommon for people to seek shelter anywhere they can, especially something that provides a wind barrier, but it's heartbreaking and it's devastating.
She says 400 people in the central Okanagan are currently homeless. This despite measures from local and provincial governments to open up supportive housing spaces.
We talk about the need for more shelters. What we need is housing. We talk about a homelessness crisis. This is an affordability crisis that leads to homelessness.
She says until governments build more affordable homes or put the incentives in place for the private sector to build them, the issue will only get worse. Back at the homeless camp, James is just hoping to get through this current cold snap.
Yeah, it's brutal. When you're trying to sleep and it's freezing cold, it's no fun.
He says a place to live is a far-off dream right now as he just tries to survive each day outside. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
Anchors away was a little too literal for one BC ferry sailing today. Passengers were stunned and stuck when an anchor suddenly got loose. People on board the Spirit of British Columbia were startled by that very loud noise and the anchor chain spinning just as they left active paths from Swartz Bay heading to Tsawwassen this afternoon. The ship ground to a halt. Canadian press reporter Dirk Meisner was on board.
Went on for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half, and then all this smoke started coming up, like the rust from the anchor or from the links on the anchor, and I started to think, I better get out of here because the windows at the front of the ferry, this thing could go right through the windows and hurt somebody, and I think a lot of people had the same idea as me because we all started to basically run for the back of the ferry.
BC Ferry says no, there was no danger to passengers on the ship or the ship itself. It says the anchor release was inadvertent and it took time to retrieve it. Meisner says the chief steward did ask everyone to move to the back of the boat while the crew worked on the problem. The sailing was delayed by about an hour and arrived in Tsawwassen around 4:20. The 3 p.m. sailing from Tsawwassen and the 5 p.m. from Swartz Bay had to be cancelled. Also on board that eventful crossing, BC Ferry's board chair and longtime politician Joy McPhail. Meisner notes a few passengers said they wanted their money back, but free coffee and hot chocolate helped smooth the rest of the voyage. An independent report into BC's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic is a double-edged sword. There are criticisms and some compliments. It was commissioned by the government earlier this year and includes 26 recommendations. Justin McElroy has more.
The title, Lessons Learned. The report, a 150-page document commissioned by the BC government, but written independently about their handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. That was first commissioned back in March. And since then, the commissioners have talked to hundreds of people and poured over dozens of documents to try and get a sense of what BC did well and not so well. And while at the end of the day, they were not allowed to look into individual decisions made on health policy, they concluded that BC's response was on the whole positive. At the same time, they also criticize many levels of what BC did, including around issues of communication, particularly after the first part of the pandemic, pointing out that questions of how decisions were made and transparency around data and decision-making were lacking compared to other jurisdictions. Ironically, despite that, the BC government released the report on a Friday afternoon, only giving reporters 1 hour to look through the 150 pages before asking questions. Despite this, Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth defended what was available to read and analyze before asking the government for accountability.
The day was booked, I think, some time ago in terms on this particular day. It was done in terms of what else is going on this afternoon. And it's on that basis that the schedule was put together. No one's hiding anything. The report's there for people to read.
And indeed, people can go online and read that report and conclude for themselves whether the government has learned all those lessons. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province and Ottawa, meanwhile, are touting their plan to make childcare more affordable in BC. While it has dropped fees significantly for parents and guardians, Yasmin Gandam tells us childcare advocates are asking for more.
We're continuing to make childcare more affordable right across the country, including and starting with here in BC.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the new plan will put hundreds of dollars a month back in parents' and guardians' pockets. The newly approved $10 a day spaces are being offered at 61 childcare centres throughout BC, transforming almost 11,000 spaces to $10 a day. Premier Eby says the announcement is very welcome.
At a time when global inflation is driving up costs for families in British Columbia, childcare fees are going down.
Eby says it will also benefit people who are planning to have children.
It helps us respond to the labor shortages we're seeing in our economy. It helps people get to work to build our economy. It helps stressed out families, and it helps build our entire province, and as you heard from the Prime Minister, our entire country.
The province, with help from Ottawa, is also helping about 69,000 families at centres that are not part of the $10 a day program. Their fees are set to drop up to $550 more a month per child. Rayet Dayan has 3 kids. The fee reduction saves her $1,000 a month per child.
This program makes it much easier for the both of us to be able to work a full-time job with peace of mind, knowing that our kids are well taken care of and are benefiting from affordable yet quality education.
Childcare advocates say it's a huge step and they want more.
We have to have more licensed spaces, more licensed programs. We have to make sure that we're investing in educators to work in those programs. But this is a big move for affordability.
The agreement aims to help provinces lower childcare fees by about 50% by the end of this year. So $10 a day childcare is in place by 2026. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Richmond.
We have more reaction now to the province's decision to maintain its funding model for children with disabilities and increased calls for the government to do more. Last week, Premier Eby announced they're dropping their plan to end individualized funding for children with autism and put a pause on those hubs that were meant to provide services to children with a wide variety of disabilities. But advocates say thousands of kids with other special needs like fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and Down syndrome still receive almost no support from the province.
Change was and still is urgently required. The current exclusionary criteria of CYSN services infringes on the rights of those children who do not have the right diagnosis and are left with no supports at all.
Charlesworth is calling for interim funding now and stable long-term funding for children with special needs. It was day 5 of the BC Coroner's inquest into the death of 17-year-old Trayvon Chalafou Desjardins. He was found dead in his group home bedroom closet. The Abbotsford police officer who found him spoke today. Karen Larson has more. And a warning for you, this story does contain distressing details.
At Coroner's Court in Burnaby, Constable Christian Drabosenig testified he found the body of Trayvon Chalafou Desjardins shortly after being dispatched to the Abbotsford group home to collect Trayvon's DNA for the missing persons file. This was 4 days after the Indigenous teen had first been reported missing by group home staffer Murray McMaster. Upon arrival, McMaster told the officer he had searched Trayvon's bedroom and had no new information. McMaster then mentioned a smell. Drabosenig asked to see Trayvon's bedroom in the basement and quickly discovered his body hanging in the closet. Moments later, the officer found 3 suicide notes, 2 face up on the bedside table and another on the floor. In earlier testimony, McMaster said he had searched the room multiple times, but didn't recall if he looked in the closet and didn't recall seeing the suicide notes. The inquest continues next week. Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
A U.S. federal judge has now dismissed the remaining charges against Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. Meng was detained at YVR in December 2018 on behalf of the U.S. Her detention here led to a 3-year saga that strained relations between Canada and China. Last year, a deal that eventually included dismissing the American charges was finalized, and Meng returned to China. Shortly after, 2 Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, were released from Chinese prison. They'd been rounded up by officials there just days after Meng's arrest here. Home sales around Metro Vancouver are down as inflation continues to take a toll on the local real estate market. The Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver says there were just over 1,600 sales last month. That's less than half the number of units that sold in the same month last year, and 37% below the 10-year sales average for November. But don't brace for any deals on homes just yet. The benchmark price sits at $1,131,600. That's a 1.5% drop from last October. Well, it is the first Friday of December, and that means it was CBC BC's Food Bank Day today. Over 3 decades, we've helped raise millions here at the CBC for those most in need. Today, no different. The last 2 years have been a bit quiet here because of the pandemic, but as Zara Premji shows us, today was a day to welcome more of you back.
Hey, it's you. You're back 36 years later. We've still got the Food Bank Day going on, but the last 2 years, you know, they've been virtual. This year, though, people are back in. We've got a live studio audience. We've got an exciting day. Let's take a look at what's happening. Let's go. The crowd returns. A live studio audience, guests, music, and more. Even some notable faces and voices.
A whole group of people came in their nightgowns and house coats.
Phones going off the hook. And a visit from one of Santa's apprentices.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas!
He just happens to be the chair of Food Bank BC, too.
We give because we want others to give. And this is just the greatest day for all of the food banks around the province and for the people that need help, especially when things get a little bit harder financially.
More than a year after the devastating fire, the people of Lytton still are suffering. They have mostly been forgotten. Christina, thank you.
All coming together for the very same reason.
First one we had back in the 80s, we actually did it from the old cafeteria. It was just one radio show, so that year we raised $462.
But now, over the years,
we've raised now $16 million.
Sure, it's a fun day filled with nostalgia.
Quite possible that I was at the first CBC Food Bank Day. I don't want to do the math, but it is quite possible.
And beautiful moments.
Maybe it's much too early in the game.
But most importantly, it's a day with a purpose that runs deep for so many.
So we can help support the food and help donate, help to support each other.
We don't know what our personal circumstances are or how they may change. It's not about judging, it's about kindness, and that's what, you know, we should be doing more of in the world.
And that's what food banks do. They give people that help when they need it most.
All right, thank you. Well, although the phone lines will be closing, that doesn't mean you can't continue to donate. If you're still thinking about it, you have until December 31st at midnight. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
The executive director of Food Banks BC says they're seeing a change in who is coming to them for help.
In the last year, we have seen this leveling happening, where there are more people needing to access food banks than we've really ever seen, which has included a lot of people who are working full-time. So you've got full-time parents, both working and unable to get food, enough food for their kids to fill their fridge, put it on the table. It's something that has been a trend that we've seen for a while now. And it's, your neighbors, your co-workers, they could be accessing food bank services.
And take a look at what you gave. We've raised $1,537,089.74. Thank you very much. And like Zara said, there's still lots of time to donate. Go to cbc.ca/foodbankday.
There's a lot of sustainable actors in Canada's forest products industry, but not all of them are.
A leaked letter reveals the federal government is concerned about its ability to sell trees under new rules proposed in Europe. That story's next. And thanks for staying with us on our commercial-free live stream tonight. So as you saw, today was Food Bank Day here at CBC British Columbia, the annual event now in its 36th year. A day of special programming to help raise money for food banks. So why do we do it? Benit Brach explains.
It's Food Bank Day here at CBC Vancouver. It's a big day to make an impact. Let's see what the day means for your hosts here at CBC. What does today mean for you?
Oh, today, the Food Bank Day is so important to connect people who want to reach out and help their neighbors, and to connect them to a way of doing that and of expressing that generosity that everybody feels, especially this time of year.
I love this time of year. You know, we do stories all year long about the need in the community, and I guess this is our chance at CBC British Columbia to sort of step up and do something about it.
It's really about making sure that we are there for our neighbors, for our friends, for our communities, making sure that everybody has the ability to survive in this world that has become so much more expensive and so much harder to live in.
And what's the feeling of this day?
Joy, being able to give back. We've got music, we've got people excited to be here. We don't have the tours, but we'll get back to that eventually. It's that idea of making sure that people have enough to eat, literally, or being able to buy it themselves with funds.
A lot of the donations were small ones that came from individuals who found a little bit to help and to give. And so that is really what's most touching about Food Bank is people and just finding it in their hearts to give what they can.
This is by far one of my favorite days of the year. There's just this energy and the spirit of kindness, and honestly, to see the numbers spike up through the day is actually really emotional.
Why does today matter?
I think today is a great day to give back. We know we've had a really hard year, hard couple of years, and with rising interest rates and foodflation and all these things really hitting people in the pocketbook, there are a lot of people in dire need. And so this is a way to say, hey, we hear you and we're trying to help.
Today matters because I don't want to throw statistics at you, but about 1 in every 3 clients of a food bank in British Columbia is a kid, is a child. The price of everything is going up. Food banks in BC are seeing about a 23% increase in the number of people who are turning up.
Today matters because people matter. And it matters to think about everybody that you live in this community with, and to think about the people that you care about, the people that you don't know yet, and just to come together towards a common goal.
The federal government has deep concerns about a possible new hurdle for the forest products industry, an important one here in BC. Concerns that came to light because someone leaked an ambassador's letter. Lindsay Duncombe shows us exports to Europe could be at risk and why this issue will soon come to a head.
2 billion trees. You've probably heard us share that number before.
The Trudeau government presents itself as planters of trees, protectors of the environment. But a leaked letter from Canada's ambassador to the EU reveals Canada is concerned about its ability to sell trees under proposed new rules in Europe. Specifically, EU legislation to restrict trade with countries that aren't deforestation-free. The ambassador says it would mean increased costs, be burdensome, and risk negatively impacting trade.
There's a lot of sustainable actors in Canada's forest products industry, but not all of them are. They're taking out old growth, carbon-rich, wildlife-critical habitat.
One Canadian concern, that the EU regulation refers to forest degradation, not just deforestation. The official definition of deforestation is a forest that has permanently been changed for a different use. Clear cuts like this are still defined as forests because they have been replanted.
There's no globally recognized definition of what degradation is. We know there is ongoing work to find a global definition of what degradation might be. And that level playing field is really important for a forestry powerhouse like Canada.
The leaked letter comes weeks before a UN biodiversity conference in Montreal, where advocates will argue species can't survive when trees are cut down. Expect a spotlight on how Trudeau can live up to his green promises in a country dependent on resource industries.
We're going to continue to lead the world in how we protect nature, how we demonstrate sustainable practices, and how we include Canadians and their concerns around it.
Words outlining a political balancing act, saving the trees and selling them too. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
There is a live shot of the chalet camera atop Grouse Mountain. Some fresh snow and a bit more snow on parts of the south coast below. The weekend, though, is looking a bit clearer. Johanna will have your BC-wide weather forecast after this.
The experts always say this kind of thing is normal. It's winter and storms happen. But when the tree falls on your house or your power line, it gets your attention.
I heard a big bang, and so the power went out. Looked out in my backyard, see if any trees had blown down.
It turned out the trees were blown down all over British Columbia's lower mainland and Vancouver Island. In the morning, you could see them everywhere, men with chainsaws trying to get the trees off rooftops.
And the lights all came on and came outside, and this tree had entered the house.
And the extent of the damage became clear. It turned out that all those trees coming down caused tens of thousands of people on both sides of the Strait of Georgia to lose power.
Two major areas. Lower Mainland at the peak, we had about 32,000 customers out, and Vancouver Island, probably 45 to 50,000 customers out at the peak.
You can see some of these thunderstorm-type clouds pushing onto Vancouver Island there as well.
It seems it was those thunderstorms that made the winds even more severe.
So we had gusts about 115 kilometers per hour reported just off of Richmond and the Sea Island area.
And that is where a near disaster unfolded at the Roberts Bank coal terminal that juts out into the Gulf south of Vancouver. Two giant conveyor belts used for loading freighters buckled like tin in a huge blast of wind. They were still operating at the time despite a wind warning. Although the order to shut them down had just gone out, it was too late. One big gust was all it took.
And then along came one at 100 kilometers and blew both ship loaders off their tracks, one into the water, the other into the ship that was loading. So both operators one rode the cab into the water and the other rode the cab into the ship.
The one that hit the ship scrambled back down the conveyor belt, and the one that hit the water swam to shore despite broken ribs. Both men are in hospital, but neither suffered life-threatening injuries. But it was a wild night, and more high winds are in the forecast for tonight. Gary Malewski, CBC News, Vancouver.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you are looking to spend some time outdoors in our snow-covered region, there is another free skating rink open to you, this time at the shipyards on the North Shore. You can lace up your skates at the region's largest covered outdoor skating rink at 12,000 square feet. This plaza will be open every day between 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. right through March. Weather dependent, of course. Adults can rent skates for $7, and it's just $5 for kids 12 and under.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Our BC-wide weather forecast with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Joe, it's been one of those weeks. Chaos on Tuesday. We've got more snow. Good time for sparkles and turtlenecks.
Yeah, all dressed up, nowhere to go.
But home.
We've got the show for you.
Yeah, that's right, and snacks.
Exactly, yes. Winter wear at its finest tonight is what you're watching. Yeah, we are tracking more snow as we speak, thanks to a low sitting off Vancouver Island. It has been an interesting day for weather. This is the low pressure system spinning in the moisture with temperatures sitting around the freezing mark. We are getting rain on the west coast of the island. Snow has been falling for inland and east coastal sections of the island, and we are now seeing that snow fill in across Metro Vancouver. But we have had the flakes fly for most of the day. Roads have been very slippery, especially the back streets, and look for slippery conditions overnight and tomorrow morning with this fresh snow. So special weather statement in place for Howe Sound down through Metro Vancouver into Fraser Valley for 2 to 5 centimeters total by the time we hit tomorrow morning. So not a lot, but that is on top of that hard, icy snow, and where it hasn't been shoveled, that is going to make it even more slippery. Snowfall warning extends through to tomorrow morning. You could be seeing amounts as high as 25 centimeters for the summit of the Malahat, and wind chills around minus 20 up where we're seeing those outflow winds really race towards the coast. So here's that spinning low. Watch as it sinks south. It doesn't make that inland journey. Instead, we get high pressure for the weekend. So Arctic high will follow, which means sunny skies, but cold temperatures for your Saturday and Sunday. We keep it going through Monday, Tuesday. That's when I start to see Pacific air move back in. And with temperatures still hovering around the freezing mark, we are looking at another shot of snow possible for Tuesday and Wednesday before we see the rain return on Thursday. But even then, it is a very La Nina forecast, meaning, Dan, lots of cold temperatures ahead. Just watch as I take you through to those minus temperatures right through to next week. And we'll track out the next snowfall as we get closer.
That sun will be nice.
Yes, it will. Yeah, keep the turtleneck on, though. It's chilly.
Duh. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
That's your late news for Friday. Thank you for joining us tonight and this busy week. For news anytime, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Also, where you can still donate for Food Bank Day. And please give what you can. Your next local news is tomorrow morning at 6:30 on CBC Radio 1. And Leanne Young will have your late news here in the chair tomorrow night at 10:30. Good night. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe.